Knowledge, Domain 9, Lesson 4. Here are this lesson's learning targets. Our goals are: I can describe Columbus's voyage, including what did not go as planned. I can describe what happened when Columbus reached land. I can demonstrate an understanding of the word courage. I can describe one event from Columbus's landing. Now let's talk about what we have already learned in this domain. Which king and queen, who at first refused to give Columbus the money to sail, finally agreed to help him? King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain finally agreed to help Columbus. In what year did Columbus make his voyage? 1492. What were the names of Columbus's 3 ships? Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria. Which ship was Columbus on? Santa Maria. In the last read aloud, Columbus and his crew completed their long journey across the ocean. The trip took longer than expected, and Columbus and his crew were very relieved to finally reach land. Columbus and his crew thought that they had landed in the Indies on the continent of Asia. Now remember, at the end of the last read aloud, Columbus and his crew had just landed. Columbus was actually wrong about where he thought he landed. I'm going to show you exactly where Columbus actually traveled and where he landed. The continents with the question marks on them had not yet been discovered by Europeans, and so they did not know people had been living on these continents for thousands of years. Columbus thought that there was only ocean and Asia to the west. Columbus didn't realize that 2 continents, North America and South America, stood between his ships and Asia. Now, to which continent did Columbus plan to go? Columbus planned to go to Asia. What was in the way? The Americas, North America and South America, were in the way. Remember, Columbus had no idea that these 2 continents were here. If he stopped here on the first land he saw, where did he really land? Columbus really landed in the Americas. Because Columbus had never heard of the Americas, on which continent did he think he landed? Columbus thought he had landed on the continent of Asia. Columbus thought he had landed in the Indies, and where he actually landed was in San Salvador, an island in the Bahamas near Florida and Cuba. In today's story, you will hear the following new vocabulary words. Courage. Courage means bravery. The firemen showed courage when fighting a fire. Explore. Explore means to travel in search of something. Maria wanted to explore the forest. Governor. A governor is someone chosen to make decisions in ruling over groups of people. The governor of our state was on the news. Island. An island is a body of land surrounded by water on all sides. We had a great view of the ocean, no matter where we were on the island. Native. Native means to be born in a place or originally from somewhere else. Now it's time for our read aloud. Listen carefully to find out what happened after Christopher Columbus and his crew reached land. Our read aloud today is Not the Indies. Christopher Columbus and his crew were proud and excited when they reached land. They thought they had crossed the mighty Atlantic Ocean and found Asia. They felt sure that now gold and rare spices from the Indies were within their reach. They thought that the king and queen would reward them for their courage and for making Spain the most powerful nation in Europe. They told each other, "When we get back to Spain, we'll be rich." They had no idea that the people they would soon meet had never before seen Europeans. Columbus's men followed him onto the wooded island. The people of the island did not fit the descriptions of people in Asia, but Columbus was still convinced that they had reached their intended destination. Declaring, "We made it to the Indies," he named the people of the island Indians. But things did not work out quite as Columbus and his men expected. The so-called Indians did not seem to have much gold beyond what they were wearing. The only gold Columbus saw was the jewelry worn by these native people. Columbus gestured to them to try to learn where the gold came from. They pointed off in the distance toward other islands. So, after trading objects from their ships for the gold rings, Columbus and his men prepared to sail onward. The friendly natives helped them gather fresh fruit and clean water. Just before leaving, Columbus gave the island a name. He called it San Salvador. Columbus took the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria farther west through the warm blue-green waters. They found more islands, passing many and landing on a few. They lowered their sails once more off the coast of a larger island, which Columbus named Hispaniola. There, Columbus told his soldiers, "We will continue to explore tomorrow. Right now, I am very weary. I will rest in my cabin. Wake me up if there is anything I need to know." But the sailors, too, were relaxed and sleepy in the warmth of the sun, and they fell asleep on deck. A breeze came up, and the waves began to wash lazily against the side of the Santa Maria. Then the waves became stronger and slowly began to move the ship. Still, Columbus and his crew slept until suddenly, crash, the Santa Maria struck the huge, sharp rocks off the coast of the island. Columbus and his sailors woke in a hurry. They rushed to look, but they were too late. They saw a large, gaping hole in the side of the Santa Maria. Their ship was sinking. All they could do was to signal the Pinta for help, gather everything together, and hope to move to the other ship. Columbus's flagship, the Santa Maria, sank slowly into the calm, blue-green water that had seemed so safe and peaceful. As it did so, friendly people from the island came paddling out in canoes and generously helped move whatever could be saved from their ship onto the shore. Columbus had lost one of his 3 ships. Still, he felt he could return to a hero's welcome in Spain if he could just find gold. He noticed that the people who had been helping him wore more gold than the people on the other islands he had visited. When he asked them, using gestures and movements, they signed to Columbus that their gold came from the high heavily forested mountains in the center of the island. At last, Columbus had found a source for gold. He would start a gold mine in the mountains of Hispaniola. The natives and the Spanish sailors brought wood from the wrecked ship ashore and built a fort. Columbus chose some of his men to remain there, while others returned with him to Spain aboard the Pinta and the Nina. In preparation for their journey back to Spain, he traded objects from his ships for some of the natives' gold jewelry, and he put the gold jewelry into a chest to take back to Spain. Columbus and his sailors gathered unknown fruits and brightly colored tropical birds to show King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. The journey home was stormy, and more than once the men thought that they would not get home alive. At last the storms ended, and the two ships reached Spain. The families of the sailors were overjoyed that their husbands and fathers had lived through the adventure. They danced in excitement, and when they saw the chest full of gold, telling one another, "We'll all be rich. We will all be great lords and ladies and live in palaces." After a long journey, the group reached the palace of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. Columbus told them his story and gave them the treasures that he brought back to them. King Ferdinand, who had been so difficult to convince, now smiled and congratulated Columbus and his men. Queen Isabella, who had always been friendlier than King Ferdinand, laughed and smiled and applauded throughout Columbus's story. And when he showed them the gold, the royal couple was thrilled. "You have done all that you promised," they said. Naturally, when Columbus told them that he wished to go back, King Ferdinand said, "Of course, you will return to Hispaniola as governor of the island. You will be in charge of all the western lands that you have claimed for us. And this time we will give you many ships to command, not just 3. But first, you must rest and spend time here as our guest." Meanwhile, Columbus thought, "All I have worked for and dreamed of all these years has come true. I am a friend of the king and queen. I will be rich and important. I will be famous as the man who found another way to Asia." Now I will ask you some questions about today's story. If the answer to the question is yes, show a thumbs up. If the answer to the question is no, show a thumbs down. Did Columbus really find another way to Asia? Did the King and Queen of Spain reward Columbus when his journey was over? Now I will ask you some more questions about today's story. Where did Columbus think he landed? Where did he actually land? Columbus thought he landed in the Indies on the continent of Asia. He actually landed on an island off the coast of North and South America. What did Columbus call the native people he met? Why? Columbus called the native people he met Indians because he thought he was in the Indies. Were there people living in the place where Columbus's ships landed? Yes, there were people living in the place where Columbus's ships landed. What was Columbus determined to find as he explored several islands? Columbus was determined to find gold. Take a look at this picture of King Ferdinand, Queen Isabella, and Christopher Columbus from today's Read Aloud, and then answer the following questions. What did Columbus bring back to show the king and queen? Columbus brought back gold, fruit, and tropical parrots to show the king and queen. What king and queen helped Columbus with his voyage? King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella helped Columbus with his voyage. What country did the king and queen rule? They ruled Spain. What did the king and queen do to reward Columbus for his offerings? They made him the governor of the lands he claimed for Spain, and they said he could sail west again. Now it's time for some word work. In the read aloud you heard, Columbus and his crew thought that the king and queen would reward them for their courage. Say the word courage with me. Courage. Courage means bravery. You show courage if you walk into a dark room, even though you're afraid of the dark. Tell about a time when you showed courage. Use the word courage when you tell about it. Start your sentence by saying, I showed courage when. What's the word we've been talking about? That's right, courage. Now I'm going to read some examples of some things that may or may not require courage. If the phrase I read to you is an example of courage, say, that takes courage, and show a thumbs up. If it is not an example of courage, say, that does not take courage, and show a thumbs down. Using words to ask a big kid to stop teasing you. That takes courage. Telling your mom that you broke her favorite necklace. That takes courage. Coloring in your favorite coloring book. That does not take courage. Playing a familiar game with your best friend. That does not take courage. Walking past the yard of a dog that scares you. That takes courage. In the read aloud you heard, Columbus traded objects from his ships for some of the natives' gold jewelry, and he put the gold jewelry into a chest to take back to Spain. Hold up one or two fingers to tell which picture shows this type of chest. You should be holding up one finger. Chest can also mean something else. Chest also refers to the front part of your body between your neck and waist. Hold up one or two fingers to show which picture tells this meaning. You should be holding up two fingers. Now, what do you think of when you see this kind of chest? When I see this kind of chest, I think of a place to store treasure. What do you think of when you see this kind of chest? When I see this kind of chest, I think of a t-shirt. Now it's time to show what you've learned. Draw a picture that shows one thing you learned from today's read aloud. Let's review this lesson's learning targets. Our goals are, I can describe Columbus's voyage, including what did not go as planned. I can describe what happened when Columbus reached land. I can demonstrate an understanding of the word courage. I can describe one event from Columbus's landing. That completes our knowledge lesson. Happy learning!